All right, my name is Anthony Aquino. I'm the pastor of Cal Island Baptist Church, and this is my video blog I call Things I Wish I Had Said in Sunday Sermon. Okay, Sunday Sermon was on Genesis chapter 21 regarding the fulfillment of God's promise that required Abraham and Sarah have faith and wait, and with the birth of Isaac. It was a miraculous event, and it showed God's faithfulness in him carrying out the promise he had made to Abraham. Later on in Genesis chapter 21, we see that Sarah tells Abraham, you've got to send Ishmael and her son, Hagar and her son Ishmael away. Remember, Hagar is the woman, the handmaiden of Sarah, that she said, Abraham, here, take a Hagar. So it looks like God maybe he wants you to fulfill this promise of having a son with her. And once Isaac is born, Sarah said, both of us cannot live here together. So you're going to have to send her away and send Ishmael away. There wasn't any peace. One person, Hagar, represented trying to fulfill God's promise on her own, and then Sarah represented having faith that God would make this promise come true. Paul makes this correlation in Romans chapter 4 and Galatians chapter 4 between Hagar and Sarah and what they represent. And that's oftentimes something people understand. What I don't think people bring out is the distinction and contrast that Paul makes between two locations. On one hand, he speaks about a covenant of Sinai, Mount Sinai, and the covenant of Jerusalem, specifically the Jerusalem of heaven. But he says in Galatians chapter 4, verse 24, it says, now this may be interpreted allegorically. These two women, Hagar and Sarah, are two covenants. All right. Now, one from Mount Sinai, bearing children for slavery. She is Hagar. And it says, now Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia. She corresponds to the present Jerusalem, for she is in slavery with her children. But the Jerusalem above is free. She is our mother. So Paul says Hagar represents Mount Sinai, and the other woman, Sarah, represents Jerusalem. The Jerusalem above, which is free, is representing of the other covenant. One covenant is of works, one covenant being of faith. How do we relate? How do we restore peace or restore our relationship with God? He says that both Hagar and Sarah represent two covenants or two methods of making this happen. So, he says that, goes further on, he goes on to say that Hagar represents Mount Sinai, the covenant at Mount Sinai, and then Sarah represents the covenant of Jerusalem. So what I want to take a look at is there anything we can learn or gather looking at the words or the meanings of Sinai and Jerusalem and see how they're used in Scripture and see if that could teach us anything more or give us a richer understanding of God's grace and God's method of justification or means of justification for mankind. All right, so without further ado, let's take a look at Sinai, first of all, Mount Sinai. Of course, Mount Sinai is where the Ten Commandments were given to Moses. Mount Sinai is obviously a mountain. It's on the top. In Exodus 19 and 20, we see in Exodus 19 and 20, it says that the Lord came down on Mount Sinai. He's on the top of it, to the top of the mountain, and the Lord called to Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. Moses is representing here, it's a type of Christ, a priest between God and man, and it required Moses had to go up to God to receive the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai. Now, Sinai in itself means light or truth or divinity, holiness. It also means teaching. So Moses had to go up to the top of the mountain to receive this truth, this light, this teaching from God. And God gives him the Ten Commandments. He gives him this covenant. He says, take this to the people, have them keep it essentially, and this is how they'll be made right with me. And we know that they break it, and we break it numerous times. In fact, the word Sinai shares the same root word, shana in Hebrew, which means to do again or repeat, always repeating. And that's really a great representation of trying to keep the law. It's something we can't do. We keep trying and trying and trying, but it's never going to be accomplished. Also notice that Mount Sinai is obviously, again, like it's a mountain. God's on top of it. And Moses goes up to it. We go up to God in according to this covenant. But furthermore, in Exodus 20, God tells Moses, listen, first of all, only Moses could go up there. Anybody else try to go up to the top, they're going to die. No one else could go up. You can't go up to meet God where he is, according to this covenant. You can't go up, you'll die. It's impossible. But over in Exodus 20, verse 26, God, I think, describes this aspect of not being able to walk or climb or step our way up to God. He says this in verse 26. You shall not go up by steps to my altar. It says that your nakedness be exposed upon it. He's obviously speaking about the physical altar. He says, don't build steps and have people walk up by the steps to my altar, because if by doing so, you would uncover, it says, their nakedness. Specifically, I believe it's talking about the type of clothes they wore. I don't want to get graphic here. But it's a picture of us trying to use the law to step up to God. When we do so, when we use the law as a ladder to God, if you will, we are exposed, but how inadequate we are and how shameful that we are compared to the law and our inability to keep it. That's the covenant of Sinai. It's the covenant of works. God says, and specifically speaking about the altar, don't make steps to walk up to me. If you do that, your nakedness will be exposed. You can't do that. That's not Sinai. That's the covenant Paul connects with Hagar. It's the covenant of works. And it's a covenant that requires someone to continually do over and over and over again. You repeat. You have to, because you can't ever accomplish it. All right. Incidentally, Paul, the word Sinai also means teaching in Hebrew. And Paul uses it that way in Galatians 24. Paul says there is a value, obviously, to the law. It teaches us. It's our tutor. It lets us know how inadequate we are. All right, now the other covenant. Paul speaks of the covenant of Jerusalem. So let's take a look at the word Jerusalem. So here we have Mount Sinai. Incidentally, the word Sinai it was so connected with this mountain that the word Sinai itself started being used as another word for mountain. All right? So really what you have here, this whole aspect, this whole covenant is that God's on the top, and it's a covenant of going up, of walking up, of working your way up to it, working your way up to God. Now, Jerusalem, on the other hand, is made up of two Hebrew words, Yeru, Shalem. And Yeru, the first part here, is the Hebrew word to throw down, cast down, go down. In Job 2:23, it says he will cause to come down for us, come down to us. All right? And in Hosea 6:3, it says he shall come down to us. Now the word come down, go down, Yeru, Hebrews began to take that verb, that action of going down, and they associate it with rain. And so this verb turned into a noun. They saw that the word to go down, and they turned it into a noun for rain. Yeru became another word for rain. And in Hosea 6:3, it says, he shall come down to us, Yeru, like rain, Yeru. So the first part here I want us to see is Yeru is the verb being come down, and it's also a noun for rain. All right, and Hebrews understood the rain coming from God. It's coming from heaven. It was God's doing. It was God sending. It's God coming down to us. Give us what we need. Yeru, come down, rain. And the second part, shalom, is the Hebrew word for peace. This is a really rich word. It doesn't mean like no conflict. Peace means to make whole. It means to make complete, put in balance. There is something broken. Shalom means to unbreak something. It means to pay restitution. It's used this way in Exodus 21:36 when it says if someone accidentally or whatever kills a donkey, you need to shalomize that situation by paying restitution for the donkey. Also, this is over here we have the word Sinai is another word for mountain, and over here we have Yeru is a verb come down. It turns into a noun for rain. Shalom makes a transition as well. It's a state of being. At first, it means peace, wholeness, balance, but it turned into a verb. So Yeru started out as a verb and it turned, verb meaning to come down, it turned into a noun meaning rain. Shalom started out as a noun meaning peace, and it turns into a verb meaning to make peace. For instance, in Exodus 21:36, when it says to pay restitution if you killed someone's donkey, you shalomize that situation. You pay the restitution, you bring peace back to that relationship between those two people. And so, shalom means peace, or to make peace between two parties. All right, so this covenant of Jerusalem, represented with Sarah, we see that it is something that requires be sent down, come down, fall down, like rain. And what comes down is peace, wholeness, completeness, balance. So put those two ideas together. We have Jerusalem, this covenant. The word itself means the rain of peace, the raining down of peace. And so you get this picture of God coming down, God sending the peace down to us, not us going up to him. So there's an obvious contrast here. The covenant of Sinai is one of going up on top of a mountain to meet God. The covenant of Jerusalem, is God coming down to us to bring peace and restitution and wholeness back to the relationship between us and God. These two represent these two covenants. One is going up, at least trying to, which is impossible. And one is allowing peace to come down to us, which is obvious in the person of Jesus Christ, when he came down to give his life, to bring peace that we acquire, we partake in by trusting, not by trying to walk up, go up, work up to. We simply are here and receive it. We receive this peace that came down to us in the person of Jesus Christ. And that's the covenant Paul speaks of, the covenant of faith. Thank you. Shalom to you.